we'll start with this. Well, as I specified in a previous video, reigning WBC flyweight champion Marlena Esparza is going to be in action this weekend in defense of her WBC flyweight title on the undercard of Ramirez versus Gonzalez by way of Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN. She's going to be defending her WBC title against former WBA minimum weight champion Annabelle Ortiz. And these are just my passing thoughts on what I expect to see and how I think the fight's going to play out. Marlene's naturally bigger than Annabelle Ortiz, a little younger too by about 2 years.
So Annabelle Ortiz is going to be 2 divisions north of where she normally campaigned.
2 divisions north of the minimum weight division, coming off that loss to Cynthia Estrada. She didn't rebound off that loss yet. She's going from that fight straight into this fight.
I don't like her chances.
Let's get that right out of the way. The logical choice in this situation really is Marlena Esparza. The logical prediction is Marlena Esparza on points because, as stated, Annabelle Ortiz is 2 divisions north of where she normally campaigns. She's coming off a loss, and Annabelle Ortiz really ain't got the kind of firepower that would carry up 2 divisions, 2 weight classes. She normally campaigns at minimum weight. This is at flyweight. This is a flyweight contest. I hardly think that Annabelle Ortiz would carry enough power up from minimum weight up to flyweight to stop a Marlena Esparza. Annabelle's not a big puncher. She's not a big puncher at minimum weight, so I sincerely doubt she's going to be a bigger puncher at flyweight.
She's naturally smaller than Marlon.
Marlena Esparza, the reigning champion Marlena Esparza, who is a well-schooled boxer. Good feet, good combinations, decent speed, though not much power.
Dodgy gas tank also.
It's not uncommon to see Marlena Esparza start to fade down the stretch as a fight progresses, though given that Annabelle is naturally smaller than Marlon, and Annabelle ain't got the firepower to really go in there and hurt Marlon. Annabelle isn't a characteristic pressure fighter.
And Marlon Esparza don't really like pressure.
That's why a lot of people thought that Beth Zamora Silva had done enough to win the fight. Beth Zamora Silva, the former champion that Marlena Esparza won that green belt from. Annabelle Ortiz is base style. She's not a pressure fighter like a Beth Zamora Silva. Even though Annabelle Ortiz is a lot more experienced as a professional than Marlena Esparza is. Experience alone won't be enough to compensate for what she's lacking in other areas.
Logical prediction is Marlon on points.
Annabelle Ortiz isn't a big puncher at minimum weight. She's only got 4 recorded knockouts. She's not a big puncher, but neither is Marlena Esparza. Marlena Esparza isn't all that heavy-handed herself at flyweight, so in all likelihood, this is a fight that will go to the cards. Given Marlene's amateur background, her polished skills that she's shown as a professional, I think she's got it in her to win a points decision, showing the cleaner work.
Cleaner boxing in the eyes of the judges.
This really isn't the fight that I expected to see Marlena Esparza in. I half expected Marlena to see about getting a unification fight done before this year is out. Naoko Fujioka hasn't fought since she successfully defended her title against Sulem Urbina. I half expected to see Marlena Esparza in a unification match with her. Very recently, Argentinia's own Leonela Paula Judica successfully defended her title.
It was a few weeks ago.
Unbeaten reigning IBF champion Leonela Paula Judica, who had a rematch with Isabel Milan. Leonela, she hadn't had a fight in a long time. This was her first fight since 2019, and she successfully defended that IBF title. She is one of 2 unbeaten Argentinian champions at this weight. There's Leonela Paula Judica by way of the IBF, and Deborah Ana E. Lopez, unbeaten champion Deborah Ana E. Lopez, who holds the WBO title. I wonder that we won't see Marlena Esparza in the ring with one of them at some point next year. This year, the reigning IBF champion, Leonela Judica, she fought once, only once the entirety of 2021. Deborah Ana E. Lopez, she managed to get 2 fights in this year. 2 fights in the year of 2021. As far as Marlena Esparza, who's going to be in action this Saturday, this will be her 3rd fight. Her 3rd fight this year, in the year of 2021, making Marlena Esparza the most active reigning champion of the 4 reigning champions at this weight. Let's see what future holds for Marlene beyond this weekend's upcoming Annabelle Ortiz fight. Tomorrow night, former IBF junior middleweight champion Marie-Eve Caire will be afforded the opportunity to call herself a champion again when she takes on Cynthia Lozano. So the co-main event to the main event, Artur Beterbiev, the defending champion Artur Beterbiev versus the challenger of America, Marcus Browne.
I like Marie on points.
Marie-Eve Caire on points to beat Mexico's own unbeaten Cynthia Lozano. Cynthia Lozano, who sports a professional record of 9 wins, no losses, no draws with 7 knockouts, though you can't read too much into those 7 knockouts because those are 7 knockouts over pedestrian-level competition.
Nobody with the maneuvering capabilities of a Marie-Eve Caire.
Marie, who sports a professional record of 17 wins, only 1 loss, no draws, no knockouts. She's coming right off that loss to Clarissa Shields in her last fight, and I wouldn't read too much into that loss because Clarissa Shields really is the best boxer anywhere at or around these weights. Only Clarissa Shields could make Marie-Eve Caire look so flustered, so out of her depth. I don't think for a second that Cynthia Lozano
ain't no Clarissa Shields.
Let's get that right out of the way. Marie-Eve Caire can make herself a moving target, fighting out of the southpaw stance, which can create a very tricky situation for an orthodox fighter. A moving target, an elusive target, a target with some hand speed, foot speed,
countering ability.
This fight is for the newly vacated blue belt, the newly vacated IBF title that Clarissa Shields won from Marie-Eve Caire in their last fight. Clarissa Shields has now set her sights on the middleweight division. She has since left the junior middleweight division, leaving behind this belt for Marie-Eve Caire to procure. And I think that's what she's going to do. I think she's going to win back that blue belt and reassume the throne as this division's IBF champion. Beyond this fight, there are unification matches to be made for Marie-Eve Caire, should the predictions stick. There is the newly crowned WBA junior middleweight champion of Scotland, Hannah Rankin. There is Sweden's own Patricia Bergult, newly crowned WBC junior middleweight champion, Patricia Bergult.
Clarissa's still registered to hold the WBO, but I think that title's going to go vacant soon.
Clarissa Shields still holds the Ring Magazine title at this weight as well. That could soon change. And tomorrow night, I anticipate that Marie-Eve Caire, she will procure the blue belt. She will become this division's IBF champion once again in the co-main to the main, Beterbiev versus Browne. We then come to the main event of that same card, the light heavyweight title fight between Artur Beterbiev, the champion, and Marcus Browne, the challenger. A bit of an age discrepancy between these two guys. Artur Beterbiev is 36 years old now. He'll be 37 next month. Marcus Browne, he's a very spry 31 years old. I don't think either one of these guys could be accused of having a granite chin, taking the best punch. Artur Beterbiev, he might have granite in his hands, cinder blocks for hands, but he's kissed the canvas at least 2 times in his career. Once against Jeff Page many years ago. More recently, though not that recent, against Callum Johnson.
If you want to call 3 years ago recent.
Not really. Though, all the same, Artur Beterbiev has kissed the canvas before, and the same rings true for Marcus Browne. Marcus Browne, who was dropped by Kalajdzic, dropped more than once by Jean Pascal, who was the same age.
He was the same age in his fight with Marcus that Artur is now.
Jean Pascal was 36 years old when he beat Marcus Browne. Artur Beterbiev is 36, going on 37 years old next month, here and now.
Artur fights out of the orthodox stance and Marcus Browne is a southpaw.
Artur Beterbiev's sweet spot is mid-range to inside, where he can let go of those big hooks. And Marcus Browne, he works best from the outside, shooting straight shots, straight punches. Marcus Browne, who's a little taller than Artur, a little longer than Artur, and a little younger than Artur.
Though nowhere near as big a puncher.
Though does he really need to be to floor Artur Beterbiev the same way that Jeff Page did, the same way that Callum Johnson did?
Don't get it in your head that anybody's indestructible.
Even if Artur Beterbiev is the logical choice in this fight, even if he is the logical choice, boxing has a way of defying logic at times. Big upsets.
Even if you're not banking on one.
I get the sense that Artur Beterbiev is going to have to work for that W. He's going to have to work to keep those 2 alphabet titles in the light heavyweight division. In Marcus Browne's corner, you're going to see Derek James. That's the same Derek James that trains unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. Errol just so happens to be a southpaw, just like Marcus.
But when I think about Errol Spence Jr., he's not the most defensively sound guy, is he?
I mean, defense, as it were, isn't really his calling card. It's not what he's known for. He's more known for his offense and his body attack and defense.
You get the sense that Marcus Browne is going to try to take it to Artur Beterbiev?
Well, I don't know. He's got Derek James in his corner, and if he tries to take a more offensive approach, the more opportunities he gives Artur to use that devastating power of his, the shorter the night could be for Marcus Browne. Marcus Browne, who is a well-schooled boxer, good athleticism, good movement, good straight punches, good jab, good speed.
Both guys fought this year.
Artur Beterbiev was in action earlier this year in March, and Marcus Browne was in action earlier this year in April. Thus, neither one of these guys is coming into this fight
Rusty.
with ring rust.
Nah, both guys have seen action in the last 12 months.
Derek James and Marcus Browne have got to know that trading punches with Artur would be ill-advised, and that's not Marcus Browne's calling card anyway. His best punches are straight punches, boxing from the outside. That's what he characteristically does, jabbing and taking a half step to maintain distance. Thus, it's going to be on Artur to close that gap and get close to Marcus where he can land hard shots. Artur Beterbiev, who's a characteristic pressure fighter, though he doesn't need to wear a guy down with volume, he can hurt a guy with a single shot from either hand.
He's the strongest finisher in this division.
16 fights, 16 knockouts, 100% KO percentage. The kind of power in either hand that can completely change the dynamic of a fight if Marcus isn't careful. Marcus, who was clipped by Jean Pascal, 36-year-old Jean Pascal, as Marcus was trying to string together shots mid-range to inside. He got clipped by an overhand right.
It was in the 4th round of their fight.
Then he got dropped 2 more times later on in the 7th round until the fight was subsequently stopped in the 8th due to a cut that Marcus had suffered from a headbutt. Judges' scores favored Jean Pascal. He was awarded that decision. I get the sense that Marcus Browne could box well for a while, but it really does feel like a countdown until he gets clipped. It really does feel like it's only a matter of time before Artur lands something big.
Do I really trust Marcus to go the distance with this guy?
And even if he does, can I trust him to win a points decision on Artur's home turf? Well, more his home turf than Marcus's, so to speak. Artur is Russian, but he's based out of Canada. The thing I found very peculiar, very strange, it's kismet almost, that Artur Beterbiev fought so hard a few years ago to sever ties to Jim and Yvonne Michel, only for him to jump right back into bed with them for this fight. I mean, we are seeing this as a ESPN Plus broadcast. Top Rank is involved, but the card itself is an Yvonne Michel card. It is a Jim promotion.
A lot has changed.
Jim and Yvonne Michel was doing a lot of business with the PBC in those days, whereas here today, they're doing a lot more business with Top Rank, and with the PBC, not so much.
A lot has changed.
Back to the point. Artur Beterbiev is arguably this division's best closer, best finisher, biggest puncher. He's a characteristic pressure fighter that marches forward with those hands high to catch and shoot. Catch shots on the arms, on the gloves, while he closes the gap. And while Marcus Browne might have some success early, I don't think that's going to be long-lasting success. I really do feel like it's only a matter of time before Artur lands something big. Marcus Browne might have the edge in speed, hand speed, foot speed. He might have the edge in athleticism, but Marcus Browne is not so defensively sound that he can't be caught. We've seen it before at the hands of lesser fighters and lesser punchers than Artur Beterbiev. Thus, the conservative prediction would have to be Artur Beterbiev by way of knockout or technical knockout late. One slip, one defensive lapse in judgment. And Marcus Browne might find that it's a lot harder to pick himself up off the canvas in an Artur Beterbiev fight than a Kalajdzic fight or a Jean Pascal fight.
Not expecting Artur to punch his head clean off his shoulders in the first round.
So if he did, it wouldn't surprise me. Better still, I'm expecting that Artur is going to have to work for it. I'm expecting that he's going to have to work for that knockout.
Marcus Browne might pick up quite a few of those early rounds.
Don't view this as a foregone conclusion. I view it as a legitimate contest where both guys bring their characteristics, their virtues to the table. But in that situation, I feel like it's likelier than not that Artur Beterbiev eventually gets his man. He finds this guy, puts him down, and keeps him down.
So I got Artur by way of knockout.
Finally, per tweet from Michael Benson, Daniel Jacobs versus John Ryder is now reportedly agreed with a potential date of February 12th in London, according to Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix. The contracted weight for the bout is 168 pounds. Super middleweight, tentatively agreed for February 12th at the O2 Arena in London. Lawrence Okolie is expected to co-feature. on the card. And, you know, we've talked about what trajectory all of this may be.
What might be in Daniel Jacobs' future beyond this fight?
Though as far as the fight itself, I half expected it to be a light heavyweight contest. I half expected it to be at 175 pounds because not that long ago, there were preliminary reports that John Ryder would ascend to the light heavyweight division to potentially face Dmitry Bivol, and the same applies for Daniel Jacobs. There were preliminary reports that he would ascend to the light heavyweight division to square off against Joe Smith Jr. sometime next year. We know that the plan has since changed. Better still, due to those preliminary reports, I expected this to be a light heavyweight contest.
Super middleweight is a better weight for both of these guys.
So if Danny Jacobs emerges the victor in this super middleweight contest, I do expect him to still ascend to the light heavyweight division because there are no world title opportunities at 168 pounds for Daniel Jacobs at this time. Not unless you're expecting Canelo Alvarez to give him another shot, a rematch, and
not unless Danny plans on staying at super middleweight long enough to see those titles go vacant.
There are no world titles for either John Ryder or Daniel Jacobs to fight for at super middleweight at this time. Thus, I expect if Danny emerges the victor, I think he will move up to light heavyweight. And as far as the fight itself, I expect the fight's aesthetic to be something akin to what we saw in Jacobs versus Derevyanchenko, because Sergey Derevyanchenko, much like John Ryder, is a sturdy, stumpy guy.
They're both mid-range to inside punchers that like to crowd their opponents.
I think the very best version of Sergey is a more nuanced fighter than John Ryder, though all the same, they do happen to have the same sweet spot, some similarities there in the dynamic of a match between either one and Daniel Jacobs. And Daniel,
he ain't boxed since November of last year when he looked poor against Gabriel Rosado.
It's been over a year since Daniel Jacobs had a fight, and by the time February gets here, that much more time will have passed.
John Ryder really the kind of guy you want to shake off ring rust with?
It's a good fight. It's definitely interesting, definitely intriguing, though for Daniel Jacobs, given how things have broken down, John's fought in the last 12 months. Daniel hasn't, so that makes this fight a potential banana skin, squaring off with a rough and tumble, physical, mid-range to inside guy like John after you haven't fought in a while.
Danny hasn't exactly taken the world by storm since moving up to super middleweight.
He looked alright for a little while in that Chavez fight while it lasted. He moved on from that fight to that Gabriel Rosado fight, and as stated, he stunk out the place, stunk out the joint. A lot of people felt that Gabriel had done enough to win the fight.
Well, you better look alive with this guy.
John Ryder's not the least bit subtle. He's no finesse fighting kind of fighter. You know what kind of fight he comes to fight. And Daniel,
he's next.